I'm live. I'm here. I'm alive. What's up? Um, yeah, wanting to organize some thoughts, and so feels like a good opportunity for me to kind of put it on the internet and be able to check in with what I say later when I can watch it back. Um, yeah, so I just came off of a month-long event called Limicon 2025, which was really great. Um, And during that, I was able to host a number of listening circles that I learned a lot from being able to do with people. And Anara was able to host a number of death and grief spaces. And um, we both got a chance to talk a little bit about why we think this work is so important around survival and safety and grounding our academic and intellectual and emotional communal efforts toward our relationship with the earth, and how I think that that can be really humbling for a lot of us, but I think it's also deeply important to be willing to embody that as we go forward. So that's what's really coming up for me to kind of talk about. um, I really want to say I feel like I got a chance to come up with a term that I'm really enjoying. Actually, I guess two big terms that I'm really enjoying that are kind of like kind of guiding this video here. Which first is council culture. um, I think it's like funny because I hate it, but it's also funny because I kind of love it. Um, and because I hate the idea of like using council culture as a counterpoint to cancel culture, because it feels like such like a clickbaity sort of like nonsense thing to do, but also it really resonates for like what I'm actually talking about. I put out a live, maybe a couple of months ago where I was talking about goddess culture, and I feel like I love goddess culture because it's what I'm really seeing, but it's like it's too vague. It felt too vague even in the moments that I was really resonating with it. And I feel like it moving me toward council culture is like really, really helping my mindset around the simplicity of what it's really communicating and the specificity that it's communicating without feeling very like exclusionary or um, like unnecessarily opaque through like complex language, which is dope. So council culture, baby. What does that mean though? Circles within circles within circles, as I've talked about, right? Like the Temple of the Goddess is all about building spaces where circles guide our thinking, not pyramids, not hierarchical structures, but horizontal power distributions and power dynamics that allow for consent heavy cultural frameworks. Because power dynamics are the problem. And so, council culture for me represents like kind of a couple of other things too. Um, Council culture for me is unfortunately a response to a conversation about cancel culture. So I get to like talk about something risque, which is probably going to be helpful for my ability to talk to more people on the internet, because unfortunately people are drawn toward kind of like risque topics. But talking about council culture in opposition to cancel culture for me is like essential, because for me council rather than cancel is actually saying, um, by committing ourselves to council culture, we're actually committing ourselves to both accountability but also a process. So we're committing ourselves to kind of putting our time where our money and our mouth are, putting our time where our mouth is. Because while a culture of coming together in council and listening and transparency and feeling our way through, okay, what's next? Allowing the conditions of emergence to really guide the process. That for me is like where it's at. Because whenever you're looking at somebody who's done something wrong, someone who has like harmed another, infringed on sovereignty of another, needs to be talked to, within the context of community. The process that unfolds is only as good as the trust and the honesty and the transparency that's built within the circle. I had somebody talk to me the other day and reminded me of particular approaches that I've seen people take to these things. And ultimately, it was a bit sad for me, because I think what came through in the conversation, this is going to be a little bit of a tangent, but what came through in the conversation for me about it was kind of being reminded of all of these modalities and all of these brandings and all of these people's attempt to say, like, look at me, I know how to solve the problem. Just do this thing that I branded. And it's fine, but it immediately sets up a different power structure. It immediately sets up a particular dynamic and arrangement that will prevent genuine emergence. It's not to say that it can't be done properly. It's not to say that the right amount of touch is not the right amount of touch, but that requires a very non-prescriptive approach, which I believe is best guided by a process of deep listening. Deep listening beyond the immediately apprehendable. I've been coming back around after like a year of just saying, like, I received all of this guidance. I did all of this study. I've done all of this writing. I've read, kind of worked with all of these books. Can I now just kind of like let it all go, come around? I, feel really clearly to start this YouTube channel in January. Then I have this event, and I'm feeling really clearly like this council culture, which I had already been talking about, listening circles, but a real affirmation that like we need to be building in the structures as a commons, right? The culture is shared. The culture has to be shared. It has to actually emerge from something real, which means it's going to emerge from material conditions. It's gonna emerge from bioregions and cities and towns and land and humans and the more than human, all swirling and dancing together. And that's going to be beautiful, but it's also going to be very difficult. And it's on us right now in this moment, when we still have a little bit of time, to like oomph into the future, to start aligning ourselves with this culture now, this culture of deep listening, this culture of watching, observing, of listening to what's speaking through us and what is in us and what our responses to it are, and all of this. It's incredibly potent this time. This moment is incredibly potent and also incredibly dangerous. And so it feels more than ever like we need to come together in these circles, listening, building councils, having our councils be informed by what we're hearing, making good decisions on the land for the survival of our fellow humans, right? Like, that's all I'm really talking about. There's a vision of like little citizen scientists being trained through nature connection schools and, in relationship to universities where the data is literally being gathered by children we're training to do science and be an active participant in fighting climate change, activating our incredibly empowered and powerful construction and engineering and trades and all of this, really, really activating this energy of all of these amazing young people with skills and talent and desire to be a positive influence in their world, right? This kind of vision of reality that we can birth together, but it requires that we trust each other. It requires that we listen to each other. It requires that we love each other past our stories of one another, right? And let our stories be true or not be true, but be proven by genuine experience, by genuine, what did I hear you say? What did I see you do? Not what did I hear you said? Not what did somebody tell me you said? I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to watch you say it. I'm going to see what's in your body. I'm going to, is that true? Is that real? What's happening? Okay. Wow. I can't help but be with you now. And so this is I think how we reweave ourselves back together in a healthy way, right? In a way that does not set up these cult dynamics of follow the leader. The leader doesn't know. Only spirit knows. Only the land knows. We don't know. We don't know the world we're getting ready to step into. We are in the time between worlds. The world already ended. You just haven't caught up yet. So the other part of it, the other term that I've been using is this is around the idea of bioregions. I didn't make that word up, obviously, but I've been using this framework of bioregions. I've been thinking a lot. I'm involved with the Design School for Regenerating Earth, which is a project by this guy named Joe Brewer. Super cool. And he's very, very focused around bioregional organizing, which is great. And so I'm involved with a couple of different bioregional groups, but I'm feeling called to shout that one out right now. And so I've been thinking a lot about that, but I've also been kind of doing this deep listening to the land and then online and then on the land and online. And I've been, for probably 5 or 6 years now, I've been holding this contemplation of like IRL, URL distinction. And what started to come up for me during Limicon, because there was like, it was across many different platforms and it was all connected to, it was a giant month-long unconference essentially. And the unconference framework is super cool. And it brought about a couple of examples of like a pretty organic relational development online in these sorts of different platforms. Genuine intimacy formed between strangers. We were using this Gather app. And someone was able to build, like, you're able to move your little avatar around. And so there was this quality of that. And I was feeling this sense of like how so many of us are really like, we live our lives online. It's very easy for me to talk about the land. It's very easy for me to talk about the relationship, but somebody during this talk really kind of pointed out, his name was James, I think, that he felt like a visitor in nature, and I think some people feel like they're an infidel in nature. And I think some people feel like they're under threat in nature. And I think some people feel very at home. And I think some people feel like they're just a part of nature. And so, this sense of bridging into the internet as a bioregion for me started to take on this, like, yeah, what is that? This bioregion of the internet. And I started referring to it as the hidden land, and the importance of, as I'm doing bioregional activation and bioregional animist work here in New England, I've been thinking a lot about the idea of, can I do bioregional work in the hidden lands of the internet? Can I bioregionally activate the internet? And I've been finding that pretty cool to think about. And so council culture in the hidden lands feels like a real thing for me right now, which is super cool. And I'm super looking forward to where the conversation kind of takes me from here. I also want to shout out a huge kind of shift that came. Another person who was at the event kind of super reminded my wife and I of a guy whose book I really thought a lot about in my 20s, which is Principles of Effortless Power by Peter Ralston. This book has been weaving in and out of my life since I was 15 years old in the weirdest way. And it led me to led my wife and I to go down a rabbit hole, and Nara and I to go down a rabbit hole of kind of looking into Peter Ralston's kind of interviews. And I'm just kind of going back through the book right now and kind of just so enjoying it. I'm just so enjoying it, and kind of reminding myself of actually how much of my language actually really comes from here. And how much of my language is deeply informed by Peter Ralston's work through the work of a teacher of mine who really liked Peter Ralston's work. And so as I'm going back and reading the book, and kind of, I've been working with that teacher's material for the last 5 years, kind of entirely on my own, to kind of reclaim the space of what in this practice is mine versus what belongs to this teacher, and I can leave here, saying thank you, but I don't need to continue the practices on, or is just all of it valuable. I've been really in that exploration of it. And it's really, it time and again comes back to a lot of the language that Peter Ralston developed, the deep listening practice, the deep listening that I'm talking about is all from this book. When I was developing it was with other elders. I was sitting in ceremonial space. I was meditating with the elements. I was doing ceremony with the sun and the moon. I wasn't trying to mirror this guy's language, but it's so funny because with those other elders who had nothing to do with Peter Ralston's work, I kind of came all the way back around to doing this deep listening stuff, and it's super rad. It's super cool to think about because it feels really affirming that 10 years away from that teacher almost now. No. I guess, yeah, whatever. Anyway, 5 years away from that teacher now, I guess, truthfully. And I see how I've actually come all the way back around to such a deep appreciation of everything we were looking at, which was nature connection, deep listening, inclusion. Oof, wowzers. That changed my shit when I was in my 20s. That changed everything for me when I was a young man. The idea that I have to include everything. That actually the game that I was going to play with the world was how much can I include? That is what got me to listening circles. That is what got me to council culture. That is what got me to saying no, I'm not going to deny the internet because I'm a bioregional animist. I'm going to say, how do I include the internet in my bioregional animism? How can it become a mythological place just like the rest of this? How can it be a place of magic and mystery and beauty and relationship and essences and souls? Because there are humans on here, on the internet, for some reason, right? I mean, we kind of have all been like kind of hypnotized together. There's nothing wrong with it. It's beautiful. It totally hijacks all of our monkeyness, and we're just like, we're just thumbing our way through life. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. No judgment. That's the animistic approach. There's no judgment. I'm not here to say no. I'm here to look and to listen and include. So I include. This is why the Temple of the Goddess has stepped into a YouTube channel. I want to sit in that. I want to revel in that silliness. I want to revel in the absurdity of a YouTube channel called the Temple of the Goddess. A Patreon called the Temple of the Goddess. What the hell does that mean? But I'm beginning to see what it really means once it touches, right? Which is something else from here, this idea of like reaching out, joining with, engaging with what we feel, engaging with what we hear, being changed by what we hear. Anyway, so feel very inspired. I'm feeling very engaged. There's a big, big, big ritual that I'm feeling like I'm going to engage with soon over the next month. And it feels very exciting. It feels very silly, like very innocent, very hopeful, which feels like a silly energy to hold at this point in life and this point in history. But here I am. And I'm feeling very engaged. I'm feeling very grateful. I'm feeling the goddess so deeply in my life and in my work and in my world. I'm so grateful for Inara, who's on the road right now, doing ritual from Vermont in their own way and connecting with their mom. And so it's a day of recommitting is kind of what it feels like today. This Sunday, April 6th, 2015, feels like a real recommittal experience. A commitment to the New England region, a commitment to the ancestors, commitment to the goddess, a commitment to, humanity as the children of the goddess. And I'm feeling pretty complete with all that. I'm really, really looking forward to taking the conversation much further. As hesitant and nervous as I am to talk about this stuff on the internet, and I still certainly am, a little self-conscious of like, why are you talking about goddess worship and animism on the internet right now, dude? That feels like a really dumb way to go. And so I'm kind of embracing. I'm kind of embracing all of this. Feels kind of silly to me. And if you're watching this, if you ever end up watching this, thanks for coming along for the ride.